Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh,
Hello?
great. And I'm sorry, I was trying, I was bordering on being rude in the homeless committee meeting to make sure that it.
I didn't get to attend. Oh, to make sure it ended on time?
Yes, yes. We were shooting for a little earlier, but as it was, we had to skip over the update items.
Great.
I'm sorry, I was trying reports. I was bordering on being rude.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, what happened there?
Okay, sorry. I think I had our YouTube up as well. So I'm like, I hear an echo.
Yeah, a very delayed. Okay.
Yes, let me promote Benita to panelist. Okay.
Hi, Benita.
Oh, hi there. How are you?
Good to see you. It seems like it's been forever.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the last meeting, which was August, so it has been.
Yeah. And Jed, I apologize. I was just telling Brielle, I said I was bordering on being rude trying to get through that agenda.
No, I get it.
So,
we had a packed one. I mean,
Yeah.
we really did, and every item was heavy. So
yeah.
what can you do? I don't fault you at all. And it looks like we're live, and we are going to hopefully have an on-time quorum.
Yes, we just need one more. Or two more, sorry.
Two more, right? I've got three of
more.
us on here, and let me see now.
And I did want to say up front, I have another meeting at 11. I have a standing meeting with the mayor at 11. So
that's no problem. Tell them congratulations for me.
Yes.
Yes, I will. Very happy. I'm very happy staff.
Let me see here. Okay, so hopefully we will see two more. Benita, are you in the HPLA program? Are you in the Thursday group?
Yeah, I'm in the second cohort.
Okay, I'm in the first one on Monday, and so that's too bad we're not in the same one. But
what's interesting was that Bill Hung was in the cohort with me, and then I think that maybe the time commitment was a little bit much, so he's no longer there. I haven't talked to him, but I'm the only representative of local government in my cohort.
No kidding. We have a couple in ours. Some of Bill's employees in Pasadena are in mine on the Monday.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That would have bowed out.
Yeah. So
yeah. I'm trying to hold the line for local government that we're not all bad guys.
There you go. All right. Riel, are any of the attendees actually board members that need to be moved over?
Not that I can tell.
Okay.
And then I know that Director Cortez will be unable to attend today, and Director Finley said she may be joining late.
Okay. But that still leaves a good pool of potential board members. I only need two more to get this business done, and we just got a couple of things to vote on that shouldn't be difficult. How's everybody doing with election fatigue? Is everybody hanging in there? Hopefully.
Hanging in there is exactly right.
Hanging in there. You know, I'm absolutely convinced if I keep updating my Twitter feed, then the results will come sooner. If I just keep pulling down, it'll happen faster, right?
That's what I was doing last night. I kept changing the channel, and I came back like, oh, I bet it's been decided. It's like, oh wait, no, I guess that's not how it's gonna work. Just because I watch a movie for 10 minutes doesn't mean anything has changed. Yeah.
Brielle, Marissa, I want to tell you all great job on the MMASC presentation. I couldn't see I think the way that the tech was set up, I couldn't see the presentation screen. I could only see you all like on the Zoom call. So I think the way that it worked was, for us participants, we couldn't see what you were screen sharing, but it did sound like a robust discussion. And so I'm glad that we were invited to do that. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was very strange, because even though we had the control, I couldn't really see it. It was like a little tiny square on my screen. So then I had the paper and I was like, this is so weird. I don't really know what they're seeing at all.
So it looks like Gary's here and looks like we've moved him over. That's great. Okay. Hey, Gary, good to see you.
I was in Zoom purgatory there for a minute.
There you go. 1, 2.
Sorry, we were a little bit slow.
3, 4. I need one more board member. Come on now. Let's see. David, if I'm not mistaken, my quorum's 5, right?
Right.
Okay. And I am 1 shy. Let's see now.
Yeah, all that hard work to end the homeless on time. We've got to have a quorum. And Caitlin and Marissa, before you got on, I was telling Brielle and also Jed, and I apologize. I felt I was borderline, or maybe I was rude in trying to push through that agenda to get it completed on time. We'll just have to make sure not to do that again.
I think it's fine. They knew we had another meeting.
Yeah.
So.
I think the other thing too is that, and I didn't really think of it at the time, but since there is a December meeting, if something really goes off the rails,
Right.
For the legislative platform.
Right. And I forgot about that too, because we had been talking about the governing board being dark in December, but yes, homeless will meet in December. So yes,
We get one more
one more bite at the apple. But I was surprised that the timing that Tim Egan had said. I really thought he'd say after the first of the year, but no, he said nope before that. So okay.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I have this wrong. I do have 5 now. Jed, Becky, Benita, Gary.
No, I added our panel, our presenter.
Oh no. Okay. So no.
Sorry for the confusion.
Why did I read that wrong? Hold on. Jed, Becky, Gary. Oh, because I'm reading Becky twice. Okay, sorry. Jed, Becky, Gary. Okay.
Nice. I'm reaching out to board member Velasco right now to make sure that he has the information that he needs to.
Right, and I know that Jerry has had tech issues most of our meetings, and I also know that he had an election last night. And we know that Maggie might not be with us. And was it Patty? Was it Councilmember Cortez?
Mm-hmm,
who
that's
might
right.
not be present?
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
Yes. So unfortunately, those are our 3. So one of them will need to join us. Otherwise, we will not hit our quorum.
Jerry, Adele, Patty. Okay.
Adele, that's a good. Oh yes. I will email her as well.
Okay, if everyone can please sit tight. Thanks for being patient. I apologize that we're 6 minutes behind, but we are waiting on one more governing board member to attend so that we have a full quorum. And I regret that we can't convene and conduct business without a majority of our voting members. So,
are we reaching out via cell phone or to? Okay.
David, can I get some guidance on, in the event that we're unable to track down an additional governing board member, can we proceed with information only? Or can we vote on things that are merely recommendations? What is our guidance here?
You can, well, I call it a committee of the whole, so you can receive information only, but you can't take any action on even receiving files. So if there's some comments or updates that the staff has, they can certainly do that. But Outside of that, no action can be taken.
Got it. So I'm looking at our agenda. So we can't adopt the consent calendar. We can't make a decision on PLHA. We can receive information on a pilot program and on modular housing. Is that correct? Numbers
Correct.
10 and 11?
Right.
Okay. In theory, we could do those items just for information, publish that presentation, and then act on our consent calendar and our action items at a later date.
Correct.
Okay.
And Jed, even because but the pilot program is not, I mean, some of the action, it's not really an action. We just wanted to sort of talk about it. So if we do go through that one, I think there's things that we can do in the absence of board action today, but just to get some feedback that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine.
Okay.
Since it is a notice meeting, obviously you can have discussion.
Got it.
And Gary, we can see you. We can see you.
Yeah, but there was a while that I was on, I could see everybody else, but I wasn't there. But I'm not sure. I think Brielle booted me off and put me back on, and then I showed up.
It's the new webinar format, so I have to add you as a presenter, and then you get kicked over to the other side.
Oh, okay.
This is starting to kind of come back to me. I do realize that we might have had some consideration or thought to the fact that we have some members who were up for election last night, and they may have been up quite late. That's one possibility that I'm kind of mulling over right now. We've had almost complete full attendance of our entire board roster at all of our prior meetings. And then here we are the day after the election, and notwithstanding the national election, some of our actual board members were in fact on the ballot last night, probably waiting till a very late hour, trying to get election results. So, Madam Vice Chair, could I get your opinion on when you think would be an appropriate time if we wanted to just proceed only on information? Do you think I should, I just want to get your opinion. Do you think I should start sooner than later?
Yeah, go ahead and proceed.
Okay. So I will then just go ahead and acknowledge that I regret we don't have a board quorum, but on our agenda, which is posted to the public, there are a number of non-action items that I'd be happy to go ahead and handle. And if I could begin, and I'll ask Mr. Frank, if you could please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank. And Brielle, I'll just ask, please, I'm going to proceed with the items that I think we can do for information only. If you can please keep an eye on the attendee list, and if we switch over to having a quorum, can you just interject immediately and let me know so that we can conduct some business? That'd be great. And so, legal counsel, can we take public comment absent a quorum?
David, you're muted.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, you can and you should.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do not have any.
Okay, and just a reminder, because of the ongoing pandemic, this meeting is being conducted pursuant to health emergency orders, and this meeting is closed to the public, but anyone who wishes to give public comment can do so by submitting an email to Brielle Acevedo at the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust, or by providing her your phone number, and we can do it by telephone. And Brielle, you have indicated that there is nobody wishing to give public comment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And only for the items that are not actionable, do any board members have any requested changes to board agenda? I'm seeing none. I'm seeing heads shaking no. So let's move on. We cannot move on consent calendar items 6, 7, and 8. We cannot move on action item 9 but all those items require a vote. Legal counsel, is my understanding we can proceed on presentations 9 and 10 and just for information and have some discussion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. And so action item, or not action item, presentation number 10, homeless housing pilot program. Staff, who will be presenting for this, please?
I will, and then we will have Patrick from Pallet Shelter present. Let me just get my screen. Okay, so I'll be presenting on our homeless housing pilot program. The recommended action here was just to provide direction to staff on the establishment of the pilot program. Okay, so at our last board meeting on August 5th, we talked about the proposed studies for the Trust's planning funds. And one of those studies was the Housing Innovation and Homeless Housing Pilot Program study. So the goal of the study was to identify innovative finance and construction methods for providing affordable and homeless housing. And from this discussion, the Trust is considering implementing a tiny home shelter pilot program for interested member cities. And the goals of this program would be to address the lack of emergency shelter in the San Gabriel Valley and to help housing navigators place clients locally. We have heard that there is a significant backlog in being able to place clients in housing. We would also connect clients of the tiny shelter homes with on-site supportive services. And another goal here could be that adequate shelter provision could allow cities to sign on to the Orange County Catholic Workers Settlement and enforce their anti-camping laws. So the structure for the proposed program, the Trust would provide capital for the purchase of the temporary shelters, as well as performing an RFP to select a manufacturer for the shelters. And then the Trust would work with member city staff to identify locations that would be suitable for temporary shelters. And what we've learned is ideal locations may provide access to existing restroom facilities, community rooms or kitchens, and electricity. This helps bring down the cost. Sites that do not require grading also help to significantly reduce the cost of the temporary shelters. And having controlled access to a site can reduce the security costs. The Trust would work with member cities in the county to help identify funding and ensure on-site supportive services provision. And then the Trust, along with the COG homeless staff and member city staff, would help to develop an intake program to establish local preference and make sure that cities are addressing homelessness within their boundaries. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick from Pallet Shelter, and he's going to provide an overview of pallet shelters, which are an example of the type of temporary shelter that this pilot program could provide.
Thank you, Brielle. And Patrick, before you begin, can I just insert quickly a question to legal counsel? I do see that board member Carol Averill is on, and can we count Carol toward our quorum?
Yes, Ms. Averill is a member of the board, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The only clarification, David, is because she's actually an alternate for Jed's seat. Does that matter?
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, she cannot count.
Okay, so we'll proceed
Sorry.
on information only. Thank you for clarifying that, Caitlin. We'll proceed on information only. And Patrick, I apologize for the interjection. Please proceed. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Great. Well, thanks for the opportunity to present to you all. I'm up here in Seattle, but I have a lot of family members and roots all across the San Gabriel Valley. So it's exciting to talk to you all and hopefully get some sort of pilot project going down there in the near future. If you want to switch to the next slide there. Tell you a little bit about Pallet. So Pallet's been around for about 5 years, based up north of Seattle here. We are now the nation's leading provider of personalized shelter systems for people experiencing homelessness. We've grown pretty quickly and exponentially this year, both pre-COVID and post-COVID, due to both the need for personal shelter from a health and safety standpoint, but also prior to COVID, people understanding the how much more desirable it is from a service provision and for people that are experiencing homelessness, and the better outcomes that these types of shelters can provide. So Pallet builds safe and dignified shelters. They're both designed in many ways and then also built here in our factory by people with lived experience in homelessness, as well as the criminal justice system and addiction and recovery. So we are part of kind of a trifecta of companies. We also have a service provider called Weld Seattle that works here locally to provide housing and employment resources for people exiting the criminal justice system. That is very, very successful, as well as a social enterprise builder called Square Peg Construction here, that also utilizes the similar labor force. And we worked across all three companies to build housing, employment, and community, and have learned that the combination of those three things, as well as programs driven by people with lived experience, lead to incredibly positive outcomes. If you want to just flip to the next slide briefly, in addition to employment, we also offer training, life skills, and supportive services. I won't dive too much into our employee programs. You can switch to the next slide there. But this is an example of one of our shelters. We have this year, by the end of this year, we'll have installed about 2,000 beds across the country, primarily along the West Coast, but we are spreading very rapidly east to cities like Minneapolis, St. Louis, Providence, Rhode Island, Richmond, Virginia, and many others. One more slide there. So this is inside of one of our shelters here. As you can see, they are somewhat basic, and that is intentional. We want people to have a very safe, secure, and dignified space to sleep at night, to store their belongings, and give a space that gives them some, a sense of dignity, but also reminds people that this isn't permanent housing. This is the ability to quickly and rapidly reduce the number of people that are sleeping on the streets, but also with that extra step of understanding that permanent housing is the end goal for everybody. The shelters themselves are made of 7 panels. They're made 100% of inorganic material, so they're totally mold, mildew, rot, and pest resistant. When connected to electricity, they can have climate control options like our heater and air conditioner. They're incredibly durable. So they have over a 10-year lifespan. You can pull them apart, put them back together over and over and over. It takes our team less than an hour to fully turnkey set up an entire shelter. And so they go together very quickly. They're panelized, so we ship them in a flat pack kind of model, so that we can send large numbers of shelters around and set them up very quickly and efficiently. They also have a lot of different features like fold-up bunks, mattresses that fit those bunks specifically, heat and air conditioning, as I mentioned, openable windows with screens. There's a ridge vent along the top as well for venting. We always have safety features like a fire extinguisher, smoke and carbon monoxide detector, and there's also a secondary egress hatch for people to leave in case of emergency or the front door is blocked. They have a secondary way of getting out of the unit. And this particular unit is our 64 square foot shelter that you see here. We also have a 100 square foot shelter. Both units can hold up to 4. More realistically, this 64 square foot shelter here holds 1, maybe 2 if it's a couple. And then our larger one is typically 2 people or up to 4 if it's a family residing in the unit. You can go one more slide there, please. All of these things that I mentioned, our shelters are just a piece of that. So, or a piece of the overall kind of what we see is a big part of the solution for homelessness. When paired with effective services, we've seen very, very high outcomes of people both accepting shelter that otherwise wouldn't, and also moving on to permanent housing. So across the board, these types of models, these types of community settings are great for the individuals that are experiencing homelessness, for the service providers and the communities. So for the people experiencing homelessness, it allows them to leave their personal items, pets, other things that might be barriers to in more congregate shelter, and kind of breaks down those barriers to give somebody their own dignified personal space, and allows them to stabilize in that unit. That also gives the service providers the ability to know nightly where people are, as they're not transient anymore, and give them a better distribution of resources and target specific resources to those individuals to help them progress and stabilize and move on to permanent housing and what other types of treatment or other things that they might need. And then on the communities, it's a much more cost effective than building traditional shelter models. It's more cost effective a lot of times on the service provision side as well. And then it also gives immediate sheltering, which helps cleans up the streets. Sometimes the same day that we arrive on site and build shelters, we can be sheltering people that night. And so it provides a quick, effective solution that really does help clean up the community. Next one there. And this is every time I look at the map, it's outdated. But you can just see a good example of kind of how we're starting to spread. I've got about 9 communities going in just in the state of Oregon in the next about 3 weeks. And we're also opening our first or building our first site in the city of LA starting on Monday. And so we're excited to increase our presence in Southern California. We have a potential site being voted on Tuesday in Redondo Beach, and then we have a total of 5 locations approved so far in the city of Los Angeles as we're working with the city to expand there. And lastly, how am I doing on time? This video is about 3 minutes long, but it gives you a really good sense that was actually shot by somebody that wasn't us of the community. But if we don't have time, we can skip over it, or potentially.
Patrick, since we're not moving on 4 of our items, I think you have time for a 3-minute video. Proceed.
Okay, great. Go for it. If you want to press play there. Thank you.
This property is our Los Gilicos campus. We, in 10 days, have stood up approximately 60 houses for individuals to come.
They're very comfortable. They're made of a material that's mold, mildew, and rot resistant and bed bug resistant, which is important. They also, they come with mattresses. They have the beds included, everything you need to basically plug and play and go. They're warm, they're dry, they have heat and electricity, and the residents will be out of the elements and not out in the cold.
The day-to-day life at this facility is hopefully going to be one that is very organic and actually allows people a lot of freedom to kind of determine their days. We're going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner here on site that will be provided by St. Vincent de Paul and our partners. We'll have activity times that people will be able to have free time to meet with their care teams. That's going to be provided by the County of Sonoma. So that will be their access to supportive services. We'll be helping them through any recovery they may be going through.
I'm really excited about this temporary shelter coming online. It is critical to our system of care. It is really often the gateway and the entry point for individuals who are experiencing homelessness to get into the system, to get the resources and services and supports that they need in order to get onto housing in the continuum of housing. So permanent supportive housing or permanent affordable housing. And this is really a critical piece that's been missing from our system of care.
So I've been working this week on making 60 signs for the temporary housing here. I sat and came up with 160 different ideas and kind of pared that down to 60. There are going to be so many different individuals here, and there's so many different stories in all of these images. And I'm hoping that the stories really bridge some of the gaps that we're feeling and in this really important issue for our community.
We do not plan to have people live in these pallet shelters indefinitely or permanently. The idea is this is really a step in the right direction. And while we wait for other housing solutions to come online, we're giving people at least a sense of dignity and humanity, that they can actually be someplace safe, someplace where they can leave their belongings, where they can actually go and do all of the paperwork that they need in order to become gainfully employed. And then ultimately we want to move them onto permanent supportive or affordable housing.
If you look behind us, flanked by Hood Mountain Regional Park, and we plan to do guided walks with people who live here up into that. I think when you come from a background of trauma, that's an incredibly healing opportunity.
It's the essence of Sonoma County, and the generosity that we're seeing from the volunteers, from our Oakmont Garden Club neighbors, from others, it's just really heartwarming, and it really embodies what is wonderful about Sonoma County.
Patrick, you're muted. Is this last portion you, or is this Brielle?
There we go. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I just want to point a couple things out about the video in our pallet shelter communities, and then happy to answer any questions anybody might have. But as you see, that was that particular project done up in Sonoma County was setting up an entire community. There's about 60 shelters there, and so there's a lot of additional resources brought on site. It's a great example of what could be done. We also have communities as small as 3 shelters outside of a church, or 10 shelters outside of an existing shelter that's used to expand capacity. So it doesn't have to look like this. This is a particular example. The shelters, there's one photo in there that's a little bit misleading. They show the inside of a shower trailer, and it almost looks like it's part of our shelters. The shelters themselves do not have any plumbing, and so they're meant to be paired with services with toilet, shower, laundry facilities, other things that would be brought on site. And there's a number of reasons we do this. One is it allows us to set up these types of places faster. It allows us to set up the shelters and everything more cost effective. You don't have plumbing and other infrastructure that has to be done to every single individual unit. So it's much more cost effective to do it in this type of a way. And then also with our employees that have lived experience, they've told us if they were given a room, if they were coming off the streets and given a room that had everything that they needed in it, kitchen, bathroom, place to sleep, they would never leave. They wouldn't engage in recovery. They wouldn't work on mental health or other issues. They would stay inside and kind of stay to themselves. And so these types of, the way that we've built our communities is that even if you have to use the restroom or get food, you have to leave the shelter, which allows services to engage with you. So just a few things that are there that I wanted to point out, but happy to answer any questions about Pallet or the communities we're building or this model.
Thank you, Patrick. And you did give this presentation to the homeless committee, but the video was not, I don't recall the video being a part of that presentation. Maybe I've forgotten.
I don't think it was. Yeah. I changed up the presentation a little bit because I knew some of you had seen some of this before.
And you're absolutely right. That I was writing down my question. I thought, I don't recall that they had individual restrooms and showers. So yes, that makes a lot of sense then. But thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shevlin. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? I see Councilmember Boyer, you'd like to ask a few questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, this committee's purpose is to help fund some of these programs. And so one of the questions I have, is there any type of history or studies that have been done for the endurance of these shelters, how long they'll last before they need replaced, what happens to them at the end of their lifespan, things like that?
Yeah, so the materials themselves, so they're FRP panels, which is the same thing used in the RV industry. So we have some history of what the materials will do. And then obviously aluminum framing, we're not concerned with on longevity. So we say a 10+ year lifespan. We think they'll go much longer than that. All the materials in the shelters are recyclable. Our oldest community is 4 years old. We haven't had any need to replace panels or make any changes to those units. We've certainly improved design and things since those 4 years, but as far as durability, we haven't seen any issues.
And then you mentioned you've got some possible locations that in Southern California. Are any of those in the San Gabriel Valley? I'm guessing you can't share exact locations, but can you share if there's any in the valley?
Yeah, not in the San Gabriel Valley. I do have a demo shelter at the Union Station Homeless Services in Pasadena that they've been kind enough to hold for us there. We've been working with them trying to look at some opportunities there. And then we have the city of LA. We've got the 5 approved sites. I know 2 are in North Hollywood, one's down in San Pedro. I can't remember off the top of my head where the other 2 are. And then Riverside would probably be the closest, not in the San Gabriel Valley, but in the Inland Empire there. We have a community there as well.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Shevlin, I see in the chat that your hand is up. Is that from your last question, or did you
No. I did, since you mentioned that visit, and I know we were trying to put something together with Union Station. Did that happen and I missed it, or are we still in the planning stages for that?
Ryan has been coordinating that, Becky.
Okay.
We can definitely get back to you. I'm not sure if it's been scheduled.
Right. And the other thing is, given our homeless committee presentation today about especially severely mentally ill and disabled people, in Sonoma County, was there any, it looked like it was a pretty tight group. Do they, depending on the individual's needs, especially for mental health, are those separated out in any way, or they're just put into the mix?
Yeah, not in this particular community. They were more, this one is for people that were most vulnerable. So people with that have experienced very chronic homelessness and the elderly and those. I'm not 100% sure on the mental health services for this particular community. Others, we do, especially in a place where you have the opportunity to set up multiple shelter locations, we believe that in some ways to organize people with like issues. Every case of individual is different, but if you organize sites by kind of somewhat like issues, then from a services side, you can be a lot more targeted
In your delivery.
in your delivery, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? I see Marissa, you have a hand raised. Is that right?
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in with a couple of additional pieces of information that I wanted to share. One thing, Becky, Brian is looking at, he'll send out the information, but he's looking at next week or the week after that for the pallet shelter. So you didn't miss it. It's in process to be scheduled. And one of the things that, part of why staff wanted to bring forward this idea of the pilot program is that I think it, as Brielle sort of started out the presentation, it brings together a lot of different issues that we're seeing as we're having different conversations with cities on dealing with their homelessness issues. And as she mentioned, if a city is interested in signing on to the Orange County settlement agreement, this would be an opportunity. We also have, I think, 7 cities that are using their state homeless funds to have a housing navigator. And the issue there is that when we spoke to Union Station, they indicated that there's about a 50-to-1 ratio of people that they're enrolling into systems to try to get placed into permanent housing, but the wait list is like that. And so having a place that those people, as a motivator for them to kind of stick with it, but also a way for the housing navigator to easily be able to find the individual and not sort of lose contact with them, would be a really big advantage. Our PIT counts are all over the place in our cities, but we do have some cities that have relatively small counts. So it would be feasible to have a site that has, 5 to 10 of these types of units in their city, and that would be servicing, between 20 and 50% of their homeless population. So that's kind of where this idea evolved from. And then also from somewhat of a, not self-serving, but from an interest in benefiting the trust. This would really help us if we were to put together some of the homeless housing with our next local housing trust fund application. And this is especially very low cost. So it would allow us to better leverage the funding because it's your score on your LHTF fund application is based on the mix of housing that you have. So adding this in would be a really great way to have something that costs low but scores high, and then allow us to do a wider range of affordable housing projects in the package together application. So that's kind of long-winded way of saying this. We felt that this put together a lot of different things, and what we wanted to talk to today was just, we want to reach out to all of the cities, if it's okay to reach out to all the cities that are part of the trust to see if there's any interest, work, and nothing would be, done without any particular city's approval in their jurisdiction. But we felt like there's a lot of steps to try to bring something back at the February meeting, and we're trying to line things up with the timing of the LHTF application. So that's why we wanted to have this discussion today.
And Marissa, can you say when is the next LHTF application to be submitted or due, or when does that happen?
They just said like late spring, so we don't have an exact date.
Okay. I have a couple of questions for our presenter, and if you would please indulge me. Patrick, the first question I have is, I know that one of the next steps was to put together an RFP, but can you give me, what is the per unit cost? If a city were looking at 5 units, what is the baseline cost that you have?
Yeah, so the base structure of our 64 square foot is $4,900, and then goes up with options, so that we have an electrical connection package and a heater that would probably be at minimum you would want, along with bunks and or at least one bed and mattress, depending on your occupancy. So it ranges. You're probably looking at fully delivered and set up somewhere in the $7,500 to $8,000 per shelter range. Whether you do 1 or 2 bed, or however you work that out on a bed cost, depends. But roughly, that's kind of what you're looking at.
Thank you. And then you mentioned that the photos might have been misleading in the video. That in fact there are not plumbing hookups, there are not utility hookups. So how are restrooms handled? Do you then also provide a separate mobile restroom unit to accompany the shelter units?
Yeah, we have that in development that we plan to roll out in the first quarter of 2021. So far, it is usually the city or the service provider, or whoever is managing the project, would either lease those out or purchase one, depending on the size of the community. We also have, as I mentioned, communities that are outside of existing buildings like churches or community centers or existing shelters, and people are allowed to then utilize those facilities. And so then you don't need to bring those things on site. So in the cases where you have that, you can really expand shelter beds at a really, really low cost because you already have the kind of more costly pieces of the puzzle there already existing.
Got it. Okay. And then I was just curious, one of the things that always comes up when we're either in the COG Homelessness Committee meeting or whether we're here on the Housing Trust discussion, when we start talking about interim housing and interim shelter, one of the things that is always discussed and raised in the San Gabriel Valley is local preference, which is if a community takes on the hosting of an interim housing unit or a pool of units, then do they have the capacity to then say that there's a preference for local, meaning that we will prefer to place our own local unhoused residents and make that an interim housing option for those specific populations, because this could potentially be an opportunity that is funded by the trust. Marissa, do you see any issues with cities if they said, we'd be interested, but we would want it to have local preference? Do you see any issues with that?
We can confirm. I spoke the other day to Phil Ansell from the Homeless Initiative, and I said we were looking into this, and was there anything that we needed to do to coordinate with the county? And he said no. So I think as long as we are not using any Measure H funding, so there's the trust money, but some of that is Measure H. If we did not use any Measure H funds and we used our PHLA or some of our state funds, the county essentially had a very hands-off response to what we were looking to do.
Okay. So maybe that should be a component of when we reach out to member cities, that's always their first question. And so maybe that can be a critical point that gets raised when we do our outreach. So I suppose that my last question would just be for either Marissa or Caitlin or Brielle, provided that, we have answered the curiosities and questions of our other governing board members. Is the next step for us to then gauge interest among member cities and then start to develop an RFP and go down that process? Is that correct?
Yes, and that's kind of what I brought up today. That's not, we just wanted some direction today because we didn't want to go out and just start talking to cities without all of you having some idea of what we were thinking about doing. And that if we did actually bring it back at the next meeting, which I get confused, I think is in February, that there was some awareness of the history of this and why we had reached out to the cities and why we came back with, hey, there's 4 cities interested in doing, 50 units. So this was sort of a checkpoint. But yeah, the next step would be to reach out to the cities. And we did assemble an RFP. I just want to clarify that sort of shorthand. It's follow whatever the procurement is, depending on, there's different thresholds, obviously. So what level of formal procurement we would need to do would vary based on the number of units that we had interest in.
Any other questions or comments from the governing board?
I did have a quick question. I just wondered in our outreach to cities and whatnot, this would be a question for Patrick. Are there locations that you can say generally work a lot better than others? Obviously, if you have a paved level surface, that's a plus right there. And that would maybe be parking lots. But I was thinking about churches versus commercial sites, if there was a preference there or what your experience is. And so when we reach out to cities about this, we could say, do you have these sites that you could identify?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that churches typically work well. We're doing a project starting tomorrow up in Hood River, Oregon, that's in a church parking lot. So we've done a few of those types. I think anywhere that you can combine both a flat level surface with existing infrastructure, both the facilities needed for the community and available power that can be run out to the shelters. Mm-hmm. That's really your ideal. So regardless of whether that's a church or a commercial space or even a park space, we have shelters indoors in warehouses, on baseball fields, parks, farms, vacant dirt lots, parking lots, pretty much anything you can imagine. We have a shelter there right now, with the exception of a parking garage, which is our next model, because you can go up multiple levels. But that's kind of any one of those things. I think obviously you want to look at access to services, access to things like transportation, and all of those other things that service provider would also find important for the individuals to have. But anything I think you can do to reduce the overall cost, the better off you are.
Right.
Allowing more money to go to services in permanent housing, but while still being able to get people off the streets today.
Have you had much pushback in terms of the visibility of the units that required maybe temporary fencing or anything like that?
No, we have seen some communities do privacy fencing, and it's actually more for the privacy of the individuals living there than the rest of the community. We haven't had any real pushback. I mean, even places like that Sonoma video that was put in as a temporary site, with some decent pushback from the community, but they kind of had they had an emergency there. They needed to move 250 people and get as many people out as they could. And then they a few months later voted to make it permanent, because the community actually very much accepted the fact that the shelter was there and the outcomes of what was going on there. So
do you also provide, if needed or desired, that temporary fencing, or would that be something strictly up to the city to pay for?
So I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you provide as temporary housing? Are you a source for the temporary fencing?
Yeah, we currently are not. We hope to get more involved, as we're not currently licensed contractors in California, which it will be changing. So right now we can only do kind of the kitted assembly of our products. Usually that's sourced through either city or county facilities and maintenance teams or outside contractor.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other discussion from the governing board members? Brielle, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not. Okay.
Patrick, I want to thank you for this presentation. I know you're making the rounds, and I'm going to see you tomorrow at SCAG again. So I read your item twice.
Well, I hope to not bore you tomorrow then.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
So, and I'll reach out to Brian, but I'm actually going to be down in the area next week. So I might be able to meet some of you for that demo at Union Station potentially. So
that sounds good. Thank you very much for your presentation. And Marissa, Caitlin, Brielle, do you all have enough direction from us based on the discussion to move forward?
I think so, yes. And one thing that would be helpful would be, we're going to reach out with every city that is a part of the trust to try to set up meetings. Any difficulty setting up those meetings, that would be really helpful to kind of get your support to do that, because we really do want to have an open discussion with the cities about sort of what their goals are and how we could customize and try to make it work as much as we can. So and we'll check in, at some point between now and the February meeting to let you know how it's going.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, so that was item number 10. Now we'll move on only for the purposes of discussion and information. Item number 11, ADIS Real Estate Development presentation on modular housing.
Yes. Scott, are you with us? Are you able to present your slides?
Can you hear me now?
I can. Okay, let me click to the next slide.
I used to think I was technologically savvy, but over the last 3 months, I've learned that I'm really not.
We've all been challenged for sure during this period. Okay, so we have invited ADIS today to present on modular affordable housing. This is the other component of the housing innovation RFP that we had discussed. So looking at ways to produce affordable housing either quicker or less expensively. And I will let Scott present on his projects.
Thank you, Brielle. Thank you very much for letting me speak on this. I love talking about this topic, and quite honestly, I'm running out of people to talk to. They seem to dinner parties, they run away from me because I just want to pin them and talk about, modular construction. I'm coming from, can you guys hear me still?
We can hear you. I
Okay.
lost your slides, but I'm going to share them right now.
Well,
Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, Brielle. It was great hearing what Patrick had to say and what Pallet is doing. That's exciting. Like I said, I'm coming at this from a developer point of view and not as a manufacturer. One of the things that I'll talk about later is that, while modular construction has been around a long time, it really hasn't been in the larger multifamily sector. And so there's still some of those challenges that we've been overcoming, but it's great to see more and more manufacturers kind of entering the space and kind of perfecting their trade. I've been in affordable housing for 30 years, really more of an acquisition rehab person. I've been too chicken to do new construction. I do stuff all over the country. And some of the people I've been dealing with, we started talking about, the humanitarian crisis with homelessness, and just started trying to figure out, solutions. What can we do? What can we do to help? We all collectively had a lot of, coming from a finance background, development background, and we were fortunate enough to kind of be towards the beginning of the DHS Brilliant Corners model that provides social services as well as rental assistance. And we kind of formulated a plan on how to do this. And when we started discussing kind of new construction of these projects, we really, I don't know whether it was genius or just dumb luck, but we realized that, this was such a, the problem had such magnitude that we had to approach it differently. And that's when I knew nothing about modular construction, but we realized that if we really wanted to tackle this, trying to go about it by systematizing what we were doing seemed to make sense. And over the last 4 years, I've learned quite a bit. I still am definitely a neophyte when it comes to construction. I'm more of a numbers guy, but I'd love to share with you some of the things that I've learned along the way. This is actually, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. I actually named this kind of our Hope On series. So all the projects that we have that we're working on that are in the pipeline are Hope On whatever street they're on. So, you want to go to the next slide. I'll be brief on this. Some of the benefits with modular, as Patrick was mentioning, is overall you have much better quality control. If you have something that's being mass produced, it's a lot easier to make sure that it's being done the same over and over again. And actually, that's where the cost savings come from. When you're doing new construction build, you're on site and, contractor says, well, move that little 2x4 a little bit to the right. Well, let's compensate to the left. You can't do that. It's all standardized. Once you get that standardization, I think what I've seen in modular building is that, a lot of times we started off, repurposing shipping containers. And I know that that's kind of been, kind of the it thing right now for a whole host of reasons, including the fact that we have a glut of unused shipping containers in our country. So there's, their whole environmental benefits of doing that. But, what we found was that we needed a little bit more ability to kind of modify the boxes that we were building. And so we ended up going to more of a modular steel construction. They look like shipping containers. They have all the structural integrity, but we do have a little bit better flexibility with it. But as I was saying, and I think what Patrick kind of shared is they have their model. They have their, the 64 square feet, 100 square feet, and that's what they build, and they build it in mass quantities, and that's where they're getting the price, price reduction, and they have a system. One of the challenges, so over time, you will have cost savings. On our first project, we spent over $1 million on architecture fees. Last project, that's down to like 250,000, because once you build it, then it's just a question of how do you skin it? How do you make it a little different? How do you make it fit in that community? But, all the design elements, the structural, all the MEPs, those should be worked out. And that's where really the savings come. And And, you know, stick construction is going to take you 18 months. You know, this, again, once we haven't seen this yet, but once you do get your rhythm going, you know, you should be able to construct the project in under 10 months. And so, you know, that's also is a big driver. Cost savings because less interest carry, quicker to getting where you're actually cash flowing. And, you know, more importantly, people need the housing. So, you know, our whole thing when we were going through this process, you know, building in LA was every decision was kind of based on what's going to give us the fastest delivery while not sacrificing quality. You know, so we, you know, we gave up on certain density bonuses. We didn't try to get any kind of, you know, additional benefits if it meant more time. And I think that's kind of paid off for us. You know, again, there's still environmental savings because it's been studied and known that you end up using less materials because everything's fabricated. And so, you know, that's a tremendous benefit both from cost and environmental perspective. If it's built as modular in California, the state is the one that regulates those plans. The state has contracted out with third-party, you know, engineering firms. And what we found is the state approvals, you know, once you get a manufacturer certified and you get a process certified, the approvals are very, very fast. And that's been very helpful. And then, you know, the other benefit is the more you can kind of build in the factory, there's a lot less risk for, you know, fluctuating materials. You know, that's something you have a set price. When we buy these, it's the entire unit, you know, with including the flooring and the walls and the appliances and you know, everything. And so once we enter that contract, it's on the manufacturer to take any risks of rising materials. And the same thing, I mean, during hot times, it's hard finding plumbers or electricians. This is something that you can lock in and have a lot less market risk. So, you know, we see there's a lot of advantages to the modular system. And then now on to some of the challenges. So as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, as much as, you know, there's a lot happening with modular construction of all different types of materials. What we found when we started down this process 4 years ago, it still was new for kind of higher level multifamily. And you saw a lot of these projects were more 2-story, maybe 3-story. You know, we really pushed the boundaries and we were one of the largest multifamily project done in modular at the time. And, you know, we were only 84 units, but, you know, we pushed it where we were 5 stories. We were able to do a ground floor concrete podium and 4 levels of the modular build. Because of that, the other thing that we found was an issue that I think is changing is that at the time, you know, we had 3 projects that we wanted to do, and the few factories that were in the area, we felt, and maybe we were wrong, but we felt that there were capacity issues. That the whole savings was getting the boxes built as quick as possible, and for us to give them 300 units to build, and we wanted to do it in under a year, we had issues. So, you know, we ended up at the time going outside the country. We found a great manufacturer. It's actually the largest manufacturer of shipping containers, and they're our first 3 projects went seamless until we started having some political issues, and tariffs went up and up and up, and then COVID hit and everything got shut down. So, you know, we've really struggled. We have 3 projects that we have to get done by December 1st. So I've been crazy busy. You know, one of the issues is that the state requires that their third-party inspector actually go to the factory, certify all the materials, and then they have like the first X percent, 20% of the boxes that come out, and then kind of a random inspection. Well, having the factory in China, we just weren't going to be able to get them in. So we just recently made the change to a group in Paris, California. And it seems like what I'm really excited to see is that a lot of these entities are popping up, but expanding. And I think that there are going to be a lot more opportunities that entities around here have the capacity, which is only going to be better for so many reasons, cost savings, less risk, local manufacturer, more jobs in the area. So, I'm really happy to see that. The other challenge that I think is temporary, we were doing this in the city of LA. So we were dealing with LADBS, and, at the beginning, they hadn't done any projects like this, and they didn't like the fact that the state controlled the boxes, the units, that they weren't allowed to really make any comments or any corrections, that it was all run by the state. And so, we were caught in the middle, and it took a long time to kind of get through that process. Now there are a lot of projects going on in the city. They're used to that. They've accepted it. And so, it's working out fine. But at the initial, at the beginning, there's just kind of dialogue issues that you have to overcome. As I was mentioning earlier, you can't expect to save money on your first building. It's just not going to happen. I think by your third or fourth building as a developer, if you're doing larger scale projects, that's really you're going to start seeing the savings. And one other quick thing to note is that site selection becomes way more important than you're doing stick builds. You need access for the cranes. You have to have certain sizes. You need staging areas. So that becomes a little more challenging than just finding a lot and working around the lot. It's a lot more important finding the right lot. And then the final thing that I would say that I've probably learned the most is that the challenges I've seen is when you have a very good manufacturer of the boxes, but yet you go out to bid and you get the lowest cost general contractor to prepare, do the grading and the foundation or the podium. If they're not integrated and together, you're in for a disaster. I've seen that happen several times because the manufacturer, their architects will swear that their plans are perfect, and the architect doing all the site work says their plans are perfect, but nobody figured out how to connect them. And if they're modular build, you can't, like I was saying before, with a stick built, well, let's just shift that 2x4 over a little bit. Connections are what's all important. So, you do have those extra challenges where a lot of general contractors aren't familiar with it. They've been doing stick built for the last 30 years. They're resistant to it. But I think, I'm starting to see more and more of these projects. So hopefully over time, those challenges will diminish. So, I can answer a lot of questions there, but I just wanted to show you, Brielle asked me to kind of show our first project. We've been delayed. We did have some problems with COVID, but this is the rendering. It actually looks pretty close to that in reality. Sidewalk probably doesn't look that nice, but we are, as I mentioned, we are just about getting our C of O. I'm already 100% leased. I'm buying all the furniture for the bottom floor. So what we have here is the whole ground floor is concrete podium. It has all the social services. What you see on that front area, we have office buildings. We have our office space. We will have up to any given time 14 caseworkers housed there, including nurses, clinicians, psychiatrists, psychologists. We have extra separate offices that they can have private meetings. And then we have a bifurcated conference room where I've got pretty large space where one side is going to be more of a formal conference room where we're inviting the county, local council member, anyone to use this facility, come in and have that space to have their meetings. And then the other side is more kind of resident driven. I have a bunch of small tables that are movable. We're going to have a smart board in there, and that's going to be more kind of for educational purposes, for doing activities with the residents. And then in the back, we have community rooms, we have bike storage, we have, so the whole ground floor is really dedicated towards services. And then we have the 4 levels of the residential units. The next 2 slides really just kind of show or list out some of the unit amenities. Each unit has, its own AC unit. Instead of having a big oven, we're doing a combo microwave convection oven and a safe space. We do have a 2-burner stovetop refrigerator, but these are all nice. We furnish these, so they come with mattresses, nightstand. We opted to not do those kind of flimsy plastic shutters, but opted instead to use more heavy fabric that you would find in a hotel. And then we also provide a small dining table with 2 chairs, and they look really nice. So the next slide just talks about, we can kind of maybe quickly look at it. It's basically what I was mentioning before, what we're really providing from a site perspective. We have laundry facilities. We have plenty of space for the residents, both on the ground floor. We also have a 2nd-story patio. And then we also have a nice roof deck area for them. We have Wi-Fi throughout. We have security cameras throughout. It's a secure site, so residents are going to have key fobs in order to get in. We have a small parking garage that's integrated in the building that's going to be secure as well. So then the next slide, I believe. So this is, I apologize. I am, like I said, I'm not technologically advanced and I'm not a good photographer. This is on my phone. So it's a little blurry, but this is our typical kitchen. You can see, we've got quartz countertops. We've got really nice soft close cabinets, brushed nickel handles. So these are done very well. And I don't know if you can notice this, but just to the left of the micro oven combo, there's a small, if you see, there's like 3 handles. That cube there is something that we felt was important, that all these units are ADA adaptable. So that piece, that if we have someone with a wheelchair, that can come out, give them that counter space, and they can use, or any resident can move that around and use that as storage wherever they want to. And as I said, all the units are ADA adaptable. We opted to put in grab bars in every bathroom. And had a lot of design features with that in mind. The next slide. So as I mentioned, we're furnishing these. These are, I did this while we were still kind of constructing. So it's, again, I apologize for the poor photography, but as you see, we have nice couches in there. We've got that little table in the back, lots of natural light. You can see there the kind of the heavier full length curtains there. We've got nice flooring in there. So, we really made sure that we used nice materials, because again, I think it was said earlier, you do want to instill pride. You do want to give them self-worth. You do want to give them something that's really nice, because these are permanent supportive housing. These aren't, shelters, homeless shelters, which are temporary or even transitional housing. Then, the next few, this is a typical 1-bedroom. And then the next one, I think, is our studio. And like I said, we're still not finished. Normally we're providing the clients with with the bedding and the towels and the kitchen kit, but we're opting to wait to when they move in, is to open it up with them and have them be involved with putting things away and fixing up their unit. So I think, so then my last couple of slides, these are the 3 projects I'm trying to get closed right now. The first one is called Hope on Hyde Park. Ralph, if you can go to the next slide, that'd be great. Again, I think they're very attractive buildings. This one actually is going to have a small component of retail on the ground floor, right under the numbering where the cutout is. That's a nice outdoor patio, and we also have a large interior patio and then some rooftop space. This one's 98 units. The next one is our Hope on Avalon. This one I'm really excited about. This is actually our first combination project, where we have, with the bigger building on the left is just like our others, which is permanent supportive housing, 66 units, has all the same features. We'll have all the same furnishings and and finishes. And then the smaller building to the right is a 2-story all modular building that's for transitional housing. So we're actually incorporating both transitional and permanent supportive housing, on the same kind of premises. And there's a nice little, you can see in between, there's a nice kind of grass area there that, kind of gives them a little bit of separation. So those are the projects that we're working on. I would love to, if any of, sorry, this is our last one that we're working on right now. It's our smallest one, Hope on Broadway. This one's 49 units, and we had some height limitations, so this one is only 4 stories high. And a little less space. It's the smallest lot that we have. So, I was about to say, I'm really excited about having these properties kind of opening up, getting the residents in. And I'd love to host any of you to come in the new year to tour it and see what we've done and show you around.
Thank you very much, Scott. Do any members of the governing board have any questions?
Yes, I did want to ask, unless I missed it, but on the list of amenities, it didn't seem to include individual restrooms, and there wasn't, you didn't include a picture, and I just wanted to clarify, do they have individual restrooms?
Yes, so they're all fully functioning apartment units, with restrooms, showers, everything. So they're full apartment units. They're just small.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of DIY and HGTV, and it's amazing what you can do with a lot of creative building. And so those projects look wonderful. I was interested, Caitlin or Marissa, excuse me, at our homeless summit that we had a year ago, roughly, El Monte was doing a modular plastic project. Did that get built?
I actually don't know what the status is. We can find out. I mean, I know that it was like in the process of being built. So we can check in to see what it actually is. But
Because
moving along there.
We were all very interested what that type of modular housing would look like, because it was very, very cost effective. And so if it does work, that's yet another option for building more housing.
Yeah, we'll check in and send out the update.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, this is a receive and file and for information only. So thank you very much for your presentation. It does appear as though there's just one last information item on our agenda that we can proceed on without action, and that's just outreach and marketing update. And so I'll go ahead and kick that off. I had 5 targets. Emails have been drafted, and I will be getting those out and then following up with calls this month. Any other comments regarding outreach updates?
No, I could just give an update that, I have either emailed or sent snail mail to where I needed to. And on what, what? Okay, I reached out to Coca-Cola as well, because they had a site that you needed to go to, but I haven't heard back from anyone. It's at this point just trying to figure out who the right people to contact are is, I think, our biggest challenge. So we'll continue to work on that.
Gary, I had the same issue, just identifying who the correct contact is. That took us some time also. So yeah, we're in the same boat. Any other comments regarding outreach?
I did reach out to the city of Bradbury. I spoke with Rick Bearcat, and he seemed interested. And I said, even though city may not have a project in mind, that doesn't mean regionally that they wouldn't or shouldn't contribute to through membership or otherwise to the housing trust. And we talked for quite some time, and I think I made a convincing argument, but he has not felt comfortable with the remote council meetings approaching his council members. He'd rather do it face to face, but I think there is a very strong argument that could be made with any city who has not signed on that even regardless of what their feelings are for their individual city or projects within their city, that they should be a part of the team and the regional effort. And membership is very inexpensive. There's no reason not to be a member.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shevlin. And just to reiterate, that I appreciate that. Hopefully, especially if we're able to reconvene and then adopt our action item on using PLHA funds and accounting some of that toward your fees, I think that'll also help move that along. Let me see here. It does appear as though there have been a number of presentations. There was the SCAG listening tour. There was the COG Planners TAC presentation to Congresswoman Napolitano and the Municipal Management Association of Southern California. Do we have any reports? Just for information only, no action from General Counsel?
No reports, Chair.
Executive Director?
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. No, I don't have anything additional.
Thank you. And so I'll just reiterate, it appears as though probably one of the issues with our attendance was obviously last night's election. So I'll just ask please staff to circulate among our boards some proposed dates so that we can reconvene before the year's end to simply wrap up our items that were on the consent calendar, which includes project pipeline and also the one action item, which I think is important, because if we can get PLHA funds to count towards some of our fees, I think that would help in recruiting and also obviously helps with the fees. So seeing none, that's all. And I would just ask Brielle, if you could please reach out to our board members to determine an appropriate time for a very brief special meeting to wrap up our business for the year.
Definitely.
Thank you. Have a good meeting, everybody. Stay safe. Happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you all when we have a special meeting.
Thank you, Jed.
Take care.